Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Europe is facing many challenges to its democratic order, from election interference to the war in Ukraine and mass protests in Georgia. And yet, the EU has been noticeably slow in responding to this threat in a united way. Take, for example, the resistance by Robert Fico of Slovakia and Viktor Orbán of Hungary to imposing selective sanctions on Georgian leaders in retaliation for the brutal crackdown of anti-government protests. Is it time for the EU to consider passing important resolutions based on a majority rather than a unanimous vote? Well, to discuss this and related issues, I'm joined by Jozef Hrabina, a Geopolitical Risk Advisor at GeopoLytics and a regular contributor. Welcome, Mr. Hrabina.
Good morning, Ashim.
Good morning to you. So it just seems that Slovakia and Hungary want to disagree with everything that the rest of the EU does, thus holding back, for example, aid to Ukraine, holding back sanctions against leaders in Georgia, and so on. Talk us through that dynamic.
Well, I would say I would distinct between the two because Viktor Orbán is truly different from Robert Fico, even though it doesn't seem that way. Robert Fico is a systemic player who is very transactionist, so he's probably expecting, or he's doing these steps because he really feels threatened, or he feels his economy is at threat. We're talking about gas supplies through Ukraine and oil supplies from Russia, for instance. So there's an economic interest. In terms of Viktor Orbán, there's a political interest, and also there is a personal animosity with the Western, with Brussels leaders and European Commission in particular. Therefore, these two are aligning on some agendas recently, but for instance, in terms of Slovakia, I can confirm that there is a 14th package of aid to Ukraine already prepared, and there are just administrational or bureaucratic obstacles that are actually not allowing to send this package of aid to Ukraine. So I would really distinct between the two, and I think it's very unfortunate that this like a general view of two rogue states aligning to each other is actually pushing them together, and it's creating.
They may have different reasons for behaving in a way that looks very much as though they are on in Putin's camp. But here are some facts. The rest of Europe is moving away from reliance on Russian oil and gas, whereas Slovakia is, dragging its feet. Surely that is something that should be questioned, shouldn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say we're moving away from Russian gas.
But there are alternatives being found. New pipelines are being laid. There's quite a lot going on. What's Slovakia done to support that effort?
There are three possible ways how you can deliver gas to Europe. Firstly, that's Russia. We know that it's a no-go. Then there is Azerbaijan that miraculously increased its production of gas in past 2 years and is delivering more gas than it can produce and actually transport via the existing pipeline systems. So it's probably Russian gas. I hate to break this down to you. Then there is Norway, which is a great source of gas, but can Norway supply the entire Europe? I doubt that. And then there is LNG from the US, and that's very often Russian gas purchased by American companies and sold to Europe for more. So I really understand why we shouldn't support Russia, why we shouldn't pay for Putin's war in Ukraine, but also it shouldn't come at the expense of our economy, because these discussions are actually, boiling down to the fact that we cannot support Ukraine if our economy isn't robust, and we see huge economic issues, deindustrialization, decline in industrial output in
That's fair
Europe.
enough,
And
Mr. Hrabina. But we have very little time. But I do want to get on to something else. I mean, another example would be sanctions against Georgian leaders who are responsible for the brutal crackdown on peaceful protests. And again, Hungary and Slovakia seem aligned on that. Now, that isn't an economic issue. You know, so how does that fit in?
yeah, that's very unfortunate. I don't see why Slovakia didn't support sanctions against Georgian Dream. I believe there's a lot of political interest in Southern Caucasus, especially from Slovakia. We've seen a lot of economic activity between Azerbaijan and Slovakia, and Georgia is a transit country. Maybe that's the reason they didn't want to disrupt relations with Tbilisi. But yeah, I consider that to be very unfortunate.
Okay.
Because
unfortunate, yes, I think many would agree with you. I'd like to focus now on Hungary granting asylum to a fugitive Polish ex-deputy justice minister for whom there's an EU arrest warrant out. Again, what does that indicate to you, that decision by Hungary?
Well, it shows, as I said, there is Hungarian position within the European Union has turned into, let's say, very specific status of a rogue state, and they really are often doing things that are not really showing the unity within the EU. And I think that's.
But why are they doing it?
Probably something that. Well, one can only guess. I don't really have reasonable for Hungarian politics.
Because Viktor Orbán hasn't been shy in contradicting the EU's position. Do you think this could simply be another opportunity that he's taking to snub his nose at the EU?
That's what I said. They really there's a personal animosity between Viktor Orbán and the European Commission. We know that the European Commission and many top European diplomats have been boycotting the Hungarian EU presidency over the past half a year that has been now passed long. So I see reasons, personal reasons, but I don't see any like political benefit Ukraine would reap from this. So it's very interesting to
understood. Well, whatever the reasons behind these actions, it is slowing down the passage and implementation of EU resolutions. Mr. Hrabina, thank you so much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a great day.
Thank you too, and have a great day.
And that's all from this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.